Hello there, welcome to Codebase Alpha. My shirt actually is behaving very strangely in the green screen. Hopefully it won't be too distracting. I seem to be dissolving from the neck down here. So hello Greg and I, welcome to the stream, good to see you. So today's a special stream. We've episode 55. We're going to be talking about code generation. And I've got a special guest, Mårten, to join us. He's better known to chat as Fuel Snable. And as you know, we have a Fuel Snable command in our bot. In fact, it's the same command that that Brendan has over in this dev chatter bot, and it's oops, that didn't work. Okay, that's interesting, isn't it? I wonder if all my bots are working. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, my alias of that doesn't work. Let's try it. It's an alias I got set up. Yeah, it's not working. Anyway, never mind about that. It just says you use T4 templates for that. So that's what we're going to talk about. So let's pop over to our pair programming screen and say hello to Mårten.
I want to point out that you're half transparent, right?
Yes, I know. I've noticed that. It's interesting because I wore this shirt before on stream, and I wasn't half transparent. But what it is, it's a yellow shirt, but it's actually it's screen printed in blue. And what's happened is we've washed it because it was brand new before. And what's happened is that some of the yellow fibres kind of is now showing through the blue, which is obviously a mixture which is green. So never mind. We'll just hope it's not too distracting. So I'm actually half teleporting away to another code base.
I think it actually looked like a Q from Star Trek or like some kind of supernatural alien.
Yeah, it's really weird, isn't it? It looks odd, but look, hopefully, because I'm in the corner now, it shouldn't be too bad. So, so Mårten, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. So yeah, my name is Mårten. I hang around in the chat as others, as you were saying, and trolling the chat. That is what I like to do. Asking about F# questions and these kind of things. My day job, I'm working with sort of big data engineering kind of, and one of my sort of, apart from F#, one of my what do you say, passions?
Yep,
maybe
passion,
not the right word, but something like that, is code generation, because I think that's a smart way to handle the problem of code duplication. And without bothering you too much, when I started, I always wanted to avoid code duplication. I think don't repeat yourself is sort of a motto I try to live by. And what happened is sometimes that when I write, avoid code duplicate, sort of, writing duplicated code, what happens is I start writing very advanced code, or perceived as advanced code. And that's also not always that good, because then people think I'm showing off when I'm really wanting to sort of just avoiding duplicating code.
Yeah, the curse of clever code. It's it can be a real problem, can't it? When you start writing clever stuff, other people don't necessarily understand. Yeah.
Yeah, because we talk about writing maintainable code. So
Yeah.
code that is repeated a lot is probably not that maintainable. But code that is very advanced and very dense for most programmers is probably not maintainable either. So I was kind of a little bit depressed in 2008 because I was struggling finding a good way between advanced code and duplicated code. But T4 or code generation for me kind of opened my eye that this is a possible way that's quite simple and actually addresses some of the duplicated code problems.
We're actually quite used to the idea of code generation, aren't we? Because everyone kind of fires up Visual Studio and kind of selects a project type, and it does generate code for you. But we're talking about a slightly different type of code generation, I guess, aren't we?
Yeah. So the kind of code generation I want to talk about is like code generation where it's possible to sort of write a little program as a developer. You write a little program that generates code for you to solve a problem that you have. So instead of writing program, you write the program that generates the program.
Yeah. So you leverage our skills as developers to actually solve that problem, rather than to, as you say, just writing lots and lots of code, which is basically the same. So Weetol here is saying it works, and I'll never look at it again. I guess he's said that many times. Yeah. So it's never true. And if it isn't you, isn't it, Weetol? If it's not you that looks at it, it's going to be somebody else in 5 years' time. It will curse your name basically for if you leave them clever code, or lots and lots of repetition where they have to do, to make one change, they have to make a change in 20 files or 20 classes or whatever.
Yes, and they miss 2 of them.
Yeah.
And they changed somewhere where they shouldn't have changed, but it looked like it should be changed. So it's quite complex. And I promised a lot of anecdotes. And one of the sort of eye openers for me was that when I wrote the program in 2006 or 7, something like that, and I was really happy with it. I thought it worked very well. I knew the code was advanced, but it didn't repeat itself. It worked well. I documented quite much to sort of help people, work with the code. And then I went on vacation. And when I came back from vacation, the developers have thrown away my whole code base and rewritten it themselves in what I felt was much worse.
Right.
But they said to me, we couldn't work with your code, and we couldn't make changes to it. So we couldn't work with this thing. So we rewrote everything and made it work for us. And that felt bad.
Yeah.
But they were kind of right as well, because they, who's the judge if the code is maintainable or not? Is it me who wrote it? Or is it the guys that end up maintaining it? I'm often a maintainer as well, right? But in this case, right?
Yeah, I'm sure it's the people who come after, isn't it, who make that judgment, and it may be a bit of a bruise to our egos, but we have to accept that sometimes we do write code which is hard to maintain.
Yeah, and it's people say write clean code, write simple code. Yeah, that is really in the eye of the beholder. Things that is simple for me is not simple for someone else, and vice versa.
Yeah.
But so what I like about T4 and these kind of code generations tools we're going to get to soon is conceptually simple. And then there are some drawbacks. Because one example of a common technique you might want to use to sort of avoid code duplication in .NET is using reflection.
Yes.
So let's say you have a class in C# and you want to sort of transform this object into an XML string. One way to do it is like you inspect the object using reflection, and then generate kind of an XML or JSON today, obviously, not XML. And you go. But one of the problems with this is that this is for many developers advanced code using reflection. And another issue with this kind of code is if it fails, if it generates a bogus JSON object, there isn't really an obvious place to sort of step into the code, because the code is very generic and it's quite hard to identify the correct place where things went wrong. Compared to normal code, which you have usually quite easy to sort of step in and debug. So I think that's a kind of an example when I write advanced code, I reach for reflection, I reach for other kind of sort of tricky stuff to sort of avoid code application. And of course we have things like performance is not so good when you do reflection, and then you add even more complex code to sort of fix the performance problem, and then it really gets kind of nasty.
So there's other approaches as well. There's like there's code snippets and things like the code rush templates, which let you write the same code over and over again but change small details.
Yes, and it's good you bring that up, because that's one of the things I kind of want to bring up as well. Because one of the common examples then is you have code snippets, right? So sort of simplify creating this code. But I don't like code snippets personally. And that might be strange, because people might think as T4 as kind of code snippets. But my problem with code snippets is you fix 50% of the problem. and you don't fix the next. So what you're doing is you're saying maybe you create a code snippet for generating a dependency property or maybe a property in a view model, and then you get this block of code generated for you, and then you start changing it to make it work for you.
Yeah.
And then you generate another block, and 2 weeks from now you have generated 2,000 lines of code of these things, and then you realize, oh boy, I want to change the code snippet because there's a bug into it, or I want to add a new feature. But how do I refactor all instances of these code snippets? How do I find all places where this has been instantiated, and how can I change it? And that, in my opinion, is one of the problems with code snippets, is that you lose the connection between
the snippet and what you wrote, yeah.
What I call the model, and the model maybe for a property in this case is the name of the property and type of property, and the generated code. After you have generated, you lose the connection between these two things. And I think with T4 and other, not only T4, but on code engine tool, you retain this connection.
Yes.
And that allows you to refactor everything when you need it. And I sometimes call snippets SIF side programming and code generation for Jedi side programming.
Yeah.
So maybe we should make a simple example on this thing. So you have this test TT file here and the test CS file.
Yeah, so we got a test TT file here. Yeah, so we're using live share here, and Mårten is in this file, because you can see by the little flag there. So that's
I realize I need to install this T4 support, so I also get to see the nice code.
So we're using Visual Studio Code because in Visual Studio you don't get syntax highlighting for T4 templates. So, but you do. There's a nice plugin and a nice extension you can get for T4 templates here. So just show the folks that.
You see the line on the top.
Yes, this line here is nicely highlighted and coloured, and we're using a plugin called T4 Support, which is here.
Yes.
Provides the syntax highlighting, and we've got the TT Processor plugin as well, which is what allows us to actually generate files or generate code. So those are the extensions we're using.
So I thought we can start off by implementing a simple example that shows you 90% of what T4 is all about.
Okay.
And then, because it's really a simple technology, so I will help you writing these first lines because I think it's, you can't really guess it the first time you do it.
Yeah.
And after a while you will say, wait a minute, this is just like something you recognize. So what I do here is I add these brackets here, meaning I'm going to write some template code in here. And then I write a loop, a normal C# loop, and we see we get, at least on my screen, I get what's called syntax highlighting.
Yeah, nicely highlighted.
And then I'm going to make something very simple here. I'm just going to add a comment, hello. Like that. And I can't save it, but let's try to save this thing and see what happens.
Okay, well, we've got some pop-ups that have come up to say that it's processed, so in theory it should have generated this code within the test CS file, so let's just go to see that, and there it is. With a comment with the 0 to 9 on it. Evening, Cody Beard, welcome to the stream. Good to see you.
Yeah, I don't see that for some reason, but it doesn't really matter. So, first off, this is kind of 90% what T4 is about. So let's see if you can explain this. Have you ever used a technology called PHP or ASP?
Yes,
or
I haven't used PHP, but it's Razor, isn't it, or ASP, classic ASP, yeah.
So T4 is basically PHP / ASP / Razor / whatever, but instead of generating HTML, it generates code. And what we've written up here with the for loop is saying a template, please repeat the line between the start bracket and end bracket.
Yeah.
And bring in the variable I here and insert it into the hello so we can get multiple comments. You know, we're kind of sort of, if we're getting paid by the number of comments we're writing in Office, not completely unheard of, then we can generate all our comments and we get paid a lot of money for nothing.
Writing, being paid by the number of lines of code you write. It's a fantastic fallacy that someone. Yeah, there we are.
And now we can save them, and we can get 1,000 comments.
Yeah, just keep adding zeros. We'll get loads of money.
Yeah. So this is kind of what it's all about.
So it's interesting, Mårten, that when we save this file, that's when the generation happens. So
yes.
there's obviously the generation engine is running continually by the sound of it, and it's actually watching for this change of this file, and then building our changes as soon as we save.
Yes, and that so you continuously, at least how I work these things, I continuously save and see the result.
Yeah.
So I make some changes. Does it look like I want it to look? And then I sort of try to sort of I refine it a little bit.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. But this is, I mean, let's say we can generate some code instead here, right? So we go here, public int x 0, and I have this Mac keyboard, so it's so if you can save this thing here and show the result on the screen, it should then, instead of generating a comment.
Yep, there it is. So we've got now got a whole bunch of variables, integer variables, or integer properties. So thousands of them actually, because we left 1,000 in there, so there's actually 1,000 of those.
Yeah, there's a lot of code here. We're making a lot of money. But you can imagine here, like saying these had to be dependent, like these view model properties. We could insert in the set method. We can sort of raising the events and so on when everything worked. So everything worked. But this is kind of it. The nice thing about T4 and whatever is that the code inside the template, just like with ASP/everything else, is normal C# code. So that it means we can read the database. We can read the database schema and generate code that reads the tables or generate CRUD operations for you for all your tables.
Right.
That we could do that, for an example. And even if it was a database not supported by Microsoft, we have some kind of Oracle or legacy database. Well, if you have an API, we can generate these things for ourselves. So it's just normal C#, and that is what also makes it so good. That makes it powerful because we can interrupt with all these kind of web services in here and so on and so forth. So I want to make a slightly less stupid example, and that is. Before we get into a more interesting example, that is, for example, if we're having because I like to write the shaders, and a very common function when you're dealing with shaders or ray tracers is the clamp function.
Right.
And the clamp function works like this: that it's see now we want to make sure that x is between the max value and the mean value.
Yeah.
And that's not so hard to implement. If x is less than mean, return mean. Yeah, I might do this wrong, but the point of this exercise is not to implement these functions really. It's to show you how you could sort of how this can sort of generate code for you.
Looks okay to me.
Yeah, and then we can also implement maybe a function called, which is very common, which has a very weird name, but it's called lerp, which is linearly, linear something. It's called lerp. And then how you typically implement that is maybe something like this. we take x and then we clamp it between 1 and 0. And we take it, multiply it by b minus a plus a, something like this.
Okay.
Yeah. Nothing strange. Okay. But sometimes when we work with these ray tracers or these kind of things, is that you realize, I want this for floats as well. And you maybe want them for the vector types, and you maybe want them for integers. I don't know.
Right.
All these kind of sort of questions pop up. And what you then do is something, what you typically do is you take this thing here, and then you go like this.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, and so on and so forth. But that's not what I want to do here. Instead, I want to use T4 to sort of, generate all our overloads, to make a little bit more useful example than we did before. So,
okay.
So I start by defining, we can't call it a model because I'm going to call this a model at other places. And it was so long since I actually programmed C#, so I forget the syntax, and I don't always know the newest syntax either, because I'm not really so much a C# developer these days anymore. So, but the thing here is, I want to generate for double and float all these overloads. So in this case, the model is what I want to generate, kind of.
So that var model there, what's the scope of that? Is that across the entire template?
It's across the entire template.
Right. Okay. Interesting.
And then what we do here is we implement the loop again, or TP in model.
Yeah, you want a for each there, do you?
Yep. Like I said,
yep.
Not so. Go here, and if you save this, let's see how it looks in the generated code.
Okay. So we need to add a bit more code, don't we? For the template.
Yeah, but this is, I think, can be useful to sort of,
Yeah.
I spelled wrong, okay. But we also see the important thing is that it complains that these methods are, they already exist versions. We need to change the type. Why is the test? Why is it complaining on test up there? Why is that red?
It's because of this extension method here. So we need to remove this from there. It needs to be a static class, basically, I think.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll fix that. I go back to the TT file. So fix the static, and also there was the bug here that it should say T. But we also need to change the type.
Yep.
And that's not so complicated. I'm doing this copy replacing you do always time, but instead of doing it for every numeric type you do, I just do it once. And now when we save it, I hope that it sort of appears as something more, and something that could work.
Okay. Let's add into his static classes. That's all. Static methods, but.
Oh yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. But you see, the type has changed.
Absolutely.
Now we have a float, and we have a lerp for float and double. But that's also a good thing about this. We make a mistake, and then we can simply refactor the template, and then all these cases are refactored at once. So I updated the template.
And there we go.
Yeah.
Nice. Hi, Copperbeardy. Welcome to the stream. Good to see you. So we're looking at T4 templates and code generation today. So we got Mårten with us, Fuel Snable in chat, and he's just kind of demonstrating some of the power of a very simple T4 template.
Yeah. So now we've written I've written our code here. So if you go back to the template and think a little bit, so there are normally when I work with this, two kind of refactorings you like to do. One is you want to, I call this maybe up here the model, and the code that transforms the model into code I call the template or the view.
Right.
So we have a model and apply a template, and that generates the code. And some model view, there are different kind of like XSLT, but that's how I think about it.
Right.
What I typically see the two use cases are that sometimes we want to change the model. In this case, they're saying, okay, we need to support decimal as well. And then we modify we want to support a complete new type. And then we sort of modify the model, and everything that happens in the template is applied for that type as well.
Right.
And we get decimal type. Another kind of refactoring, or what we want to do sometimes, is that we do bug fix in the template and make sure that we fix the bug, or we're adding a new method. What kind of method? We can make. I'm trying to come up with a good method here. Maybe saturate. This is just sometimes called saturate, and then we clamp it between 0 and 1. So this is something I said, sort of make sure that this is always between 0 and 1. It's called saturate sometimes when I write shaders. I don't know why.
Or unipolar, I think, is in the digital audio world. Do you have unipolar between 0 and 1, and bipolar between -1 and +1? Yeah.
So T4 is between. It could also be a very good one, like a version of clamp. We can implement that as well. I'm just going to implement these between. Those suggested in chat by Vitlog.
Oh, right, yes, in between, yeah.
False, no. Something like this. It might be wrong. And you probably shouldn't do it this way. Whatever. I'm not here to write the perfect implementation. I'm just here to sort of, demonstrate how this could be done. Can we have a look at the generated code here?
Yeah, we're reviewing the generated code now. There it is. So we got the double and the float and the decimal versions of all those. Nice.
Yes, Vitlog is correct that the TT templates run when we save it.
Yeah.
Then it's executed. So the two use cases which I think are important is supported kind of by this thing here. And if you compare this with snippets kind of, we could have made a snippet for all these overloads, and then type in double to get the double overloads, and then type in float to get the float overloads. But the problem with snippets, I think, is that when I wanted to add this new method, well, how does that work? We kind of lose the connection between the model and the generated code. And we start editing in the generated code instead. The drawback maybe with T4 is if you ever change the generated code, and then this is also a feature, but one potential counter argument is like, well, what if I need to change the generated code? Then whenever the template is running, it's just going to overwrite it, and that is so. It doesn't try to do any smart merging or anything. T4 doesn't do that. It just overwrites it. Here you are. Now, a pretty powerful feature with no, exactly right. You don't change the generated code. But in C# there is a feature called partial classes, which allows, if you want to sort of add more methods to the generated class, you can use it by defining a partial class, and then you can define another partial class, which is also called test, in a different part of the program. And then this is merged during compile time into one space. And this is also very typical when you work with generated code, that you have a class that is generated and you don't touch it. That is kind of, it is what it is. Or you update the template. But then you have another part, which is the manually written code, which is kind of written small extensions to this thing.
Yeah.
And that is in another file. And that is not written by the T4 template. That is written by the program. And that actually works out, in my opinion, quite well.
Yeah, you're using the code generation to do the donkey work, all the repetitive stuff that you want to get to make sure it's exactly right. You don't repeat yourself stuff that you get that generated, but where you need the variable logic and the code which uses any of these methods or whatever, then that's in the other partial class. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and you basically said it like what we are replacing is that this human thing that we are writing. I could have copy pasted this code and wrote code that was working, but I automated that process instead. I got bored and instead generated it.
We did what programmers do. We wrote some code to make it easier for ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a natural extension of what we're doing. That we are writing. Often we're writing code to automate the process and to sort of save company money or whatever. Well, why don't we automate our own programming process sometimes? We can't always do it, but sometimes it makes a lot of sense, I think. Now, another counter could be, but if you look at the CS file here, the code is kind of still duplicated. Yeah, and that's true. The code that is generated may contain redundancies in some sense, but the difference between before and now is that I'm not maintaining this redundancy.
Yeah.
I'm maintaining the template, which has a low amount of redundancy, and I'm maintaining the model, and it generates code that is redundant, but I'm not maintaining this thing.
Yeah, you're not creating any technical debt by doing that, are you? Because your code's in one place, and you're not repeating yourself in your actual program code which does the generation.
Yeah. And coming back to my previous story about all this kind of advanced code I wrote in the good old days, is that even if you don't get anything about this generated code, you don't really understand this thing. Well, you can look at the test.cs file. That's normal C# code. You can put a breakpoint in that thing. That's normal, and work with that code and understand what it's doing. You can even change it. That's a bad idea, but you can. And then in the code review, you're going to get feedback saying, well, that's not how you work with these things here. But you cannot. It's not magic. It's normal things. The debugger work. Everything works like normal.
Yeah.
And when I wrote this advanced code before and these kind of things, the normal developers had to learn new patterns, new tools to sort of work with that kind of code. So I think there's some strong benefits of these things here. Now, some people counter-argue towards code generation, this kind of tools, is that it's ugly. These things should be solvable inside the language. Why do we need to reach for another tool? The C# should support code generation or inside the language, and we don't need all these extra tools. But whenever I run into languages that are statically typed, that tries to sort of fix these things, in my opinion, they get very complex and very hard to understand. In a dynamic language like Python or in Clojure or in Ruby, metaprogramming is easier. But if you want to retain the static typing, I found all the solutions I ever seen, it's been very hard to understand.
Right. I've not come across that at all.
Like type providers in F#. I'm a little bit of heretic, but I'm not really a fan of them. Macros in Scala is also complex beast. Metaprogramming tricks in C++, where you write metaprogrammings using partial templates in C++. I love doing that. But to be honest, that is like, you have to be a true believer to like that.
Well, and this is familiar, isn't it? If anyone who's worked, as you say, anyone's worked with Razor pages, there's nothing surprising about what's going on in this particular file we've got at the moment.
No, it's probably too simple, if anything. People think, is this it? What can you do with these things?
No, let's answer that question. How far can this kind of model go? Because we're producing like four methods here with different types on them. But
Yep.
you say you can get quite excited about that, and then after a while you'd start thinking, well, is that all? So what else can we do?
Yeah, the problem in C# is a bit low is that there is no common base class. There is no common base class for numeric types in C#. So anyway, so let's try to write. I was thinking what we should try to do is write a dapper, but using
using T4.
Using T4 instead of using dapper. So dapper is a common tool. It's called a micro-ORM, but it basically allows us to sort of take an SQL query, take the row, and transform the row results into objects of a typed objects.
Yeah.
And dapper does this using reflection internally. But in order to get performance, because this is not so hard to do, like if you look at a class, and if there's a name, is something called name, then you read the name column from the row set, and you map it into that value. But the problem when you do that using reflection is that this is very slow, or at least, yeah, it's gotten better over the years, but it's still too slow. So what Dapper does in order to make this fast is that it creates a dynamic assembly during runtime, and then it creates a class in runtime that does this mapping, and then it creates a method inside the class, and in that method they put in IL instructions to sort of generate a method on the fly depending on how your class looks.
Right.
And then it gits it, and then you have it. But you can imagine if that ever fails, you have no code to look at.
Yeah, you'd never know where to look, would you?
And whenever I've done this thing, I often end up with exceptions like invalid IL code detected. I would just hate having to debug that error in code I wrote in a production system.
Yeah.
So whenever I reached for this thing, I never shipped anything because I just felt I'm not comfortable. It's just too. If this doesn't work, it's just too horrible. Dapper, they put in a lot of tests and a lot of testing to make it work, and it's a very good tool. But I want to show. I think we can actually write something that works like Dapper using T4.
Right. Okay. That sounds interesting.
So shall we start with the program? Do we have an example there? I think.
Yeah, we got an example program here. So let me pop over to this. So this is using my rocket launches database. So it's just I think there's only 4 tables in there. And the table we've chosen to look at is the launch table, which simply is a list of rocket launches. And the data in there is quite old. So there's an ID, there's a string which has the mission, and there's a launch date. And if the launch date happens to be null, we have an NET date, a next estimated time, which is also a string. And these other things like the rocket and all that, they're all they are actually foreign keys, so they're not strings, but the object we will eventually kind of pull out of the rocket launches database would have the name of the rocket, the name of the launch provider, the name of the launch site, etc. So we've got that, and we've got some code here which we're using system.data and the SQL client here to read the database, and down here we're simply printing out the rows from the launch table. So I could actually run this and we'll see what the output is. So I'll just do a .NET run on this. Okay, and you can see here is the output. So we've got 8 rows that have been output there. So it is old data, but you can see here we've got on row 2 the Crew Dragon Demo 1, which launched at this time. And then, for example, we've got some future ones here. We've got the Starliner Orbital Test Flight Spring 2019. We've missed that one, but there we are. It's old data. So that's how that works.
So when you're looking at this code, at least when I look at this code, and what Dapper tries to do is he's saying, what you really care about in this code is destruct, you define the launch,
Yeah.
I think everything else here in this read launches is kind of just an effect of that. It's obvious how you should implement that thing, and it's very easy to make mistakes and mixing up types and all the kind of things. So the only really thing that carries interesting information in my head here is the class up there, the launch class.
Yeah.
And everything else is kind of can be generated from that. And that is kind of how Dapper works. It would inspect your launch class and then generate these read launches you're doing, kind of generate that in runtime using dynamic assemblies and IL, Mrten, all these kind of horrible things. So my suggestion would be that we try to generate this thing here.
Okay.
And to start this, I suggest we create a new file, a new TT file.
Okay. Which we need to copy that first line across, don't we?
Yeah.
Let's save this as, what do you want to call it?
Launches or something. Launch. .tt, I guess, is what you want to say to us.
Yeah.
These are SMB's famous fat fingers.
Yeah, my fat fingers, yeah. So we generated a file, of course, as launch CS file from creating that, but it's empty.
Yes.
Cool.
And this first line you see here, this output extension, that's actually a preprocessor templating, sending instructions to the T4 that when you write this file, you should use the extension .cs. There are other sort of preprocessor to sort of bring in assemblies and to sort of
Oh right,
do
really?
this kind of. Sorry.
Oh, so I didn't realise that you can do all that within the template. That's really interesting.
Yeah. So you can bring in other assemblies and sort of reference these things, but we're not going to touch on that so much these days today.
Okay.
But first, I'm going to introduce another new thing here that allows us to sort of define our template. So to define our model. And we saw up here that we can write code like this to sort of start writing code that is generated. But now we want to define a meta model or something that can hold our classes or our definition of this launch and other. We're not going to hard code this to launch. We're going to make support other things as well. So then we're going to define. And then I use this special plus character here, and that allows me to define a class inside here.
Oh wow!
And I had a name for it, so I'm going to look what I call it in my in my example. And so, let me see here. Now I'm going to find it. I'm just looking for a good name.
We've been raided, so Talk to Me Gooseman is raiding with a party of 18. Welcome to all viewers from Talk to Me Gooseman stream. So thank you for joining us. You joined us at a time when we're looking at. Thank you for the follow, Lily Hazel. Here's some Electric Alf hype. Thank you for your. Actually, I can't see it on this screen, so I haven't got my hype transferred across to this screen, but. What we'll do is I'll just pop over to coding and we'll just look at that. Do some hype over there. There's some hype for the follow. So thank you so much for the follow. What we're doing at the moment is we're looking at T4 templating and code generation, and we've got a special guest Mårten who's joined us to take us through this process. So hope you're interested. Yeah, it's Fuel Snowball.
So I call it data row in my other example, like the definition of the data row. And what does a data row contain? What is? Well, it has a name. We could say.
See, the fat fingers is catching, isn't it?
Yeah. You're destroying me. So the name here for the data row is launch or whatever.
Yeah.
But you can have other data rows defined as well. But another thing we also have, which we're going to define, are fields. And then I'm going to define a fields array.
Okay.
And because I'm having slight issues, I'm going to align things.
Okay.
So that is kind of the meta model for our for the launch model.
Do you want to code? Thank you very much for the follow. That's very kind of you.
So what I'm going to do. So now let's say if you want to define what the field should be.
Okay.
So it should be a class, right?
Yeah. Do you want me to do something? Do you want me to write something?
Yep, you can write. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. Okay. So it's going to have a name and a type, isn't it?
Yes, exactly right. And what type should type be? When I start with T4, I try to have valid.NET types. I've given that thing up. I always use string now. It's just easier to work with.
Okay. Okay.
And then, so that's pretty cool. So now we can actually start defining our model in this case, which is sort of, the launch. So we can go up to the top here.
Okay.
Of the file, and then you can, I would call it model because that's how I do it. So var model equals a new array of data row.
Okay. Can we use initializer, are we?
Yep.
Okay.
And also data row is misspelled, at least on my screen.
There we go.
And then we create a new line, and then we create a new data row, and new data row, and we initialize the name to launch, right?
Yeah.
Launch.
Lunch, yeah.
And the field we can set to an empty array for the time being. Fields.
Is it called fields? Okay.
Equals new field, yes.
And I'm going to put my trailing commas in there because I'm a trailing comma kind of guy.
Yeah, I am completely with you on that thing. But you've forgotten a trailing comma then. You can have a trailing comma after data row as well.
I can, you're right, yes. There we go.
So what happens when you save this? Does it complain?
Yes, it's got a error compiling transform according to that.
Did it say anything else than that?
Creation must have an array size or an initializer.
Yeah, you forgot the array size in the field.
Yeah, so we'll just have 0, yeah.
I agree. Leading commas is also fine in my book. A 0 array.
0 array, yeah.
People think I'm ironic when I write leading commas, but I'm serious.
So it says field name is never assigned, so I think we.
Yeah, but that's okay. Yeah. That's okay, right? So now to start, let's copy paste a little bit from no. So let's make a namespace in here between. I'm going to write some code here. Sorry.
You carry on.
Namespace data rows.
Which also leading comma kind of guy, yeah. So yeah. I've used leading commas in writing SQL statements. So something where I want to be able to remove fields or whatever. But
yeah. So now we're gonna loop over the model. I like to put the model on top, bit low. That's what I like to do. And then I put all template below. This is to simplify extracting the model into separate file at a later point. If you want to do that, to make reusable templates. So I would then you can write a for loop here.
Is this a templated for loop? Yeah.
Yeah. As a template for loop. Yeah, basically T4 has T4 doesn't really enforce a specific order. It might be something, but I don't remember. Now I'm going to share a trick with you here,
okay.
Which is important for code. So this is one of the drawbacks with T4. But in order to get the spaces to get the code aligned, because I like to have the generated code being aligned, I found that it's best to write the brackets like this.
Okay.
At the start of the line and
at the end of the line, yeah.
And like this, because otherwise it's getting hard to generate the generated code. So this is kind of a bug in T4, but I just accepted this is the way I do it.
So, what are we?
Data row.
Yeah.
In model. And then you new bracket, and then you put this what's called, I don't know what to say, but this end and start template thingy. Yeah, that one. And also put it at start.
Yeah.
Put it start line, yeah, like that. And then you write a new one. So the beginning, yes, like that.
Okay.
And then now you write your class. So you make a public class. And what name should it have?
So this is data row. Oh, it's going to be equals.
Yes, exactly.
Data row. Is it dot name? Yeah.
Yes. And to Pascal case, yeah. And then save it. And we see how the generated code looks.
There it is.
A slight delay here on my screen, so it takes some time for me to see. I see it. So yeah, launch is lowercase, but let's
sort that
fix.
out then, yeah.
So that is the But now we fix the model. Okay, but now we kind of we generate class, but now you need the feeds. So let's create some feeds as well, right?
Yeah.
So then you extend the model with the ID field and what other field did we talk about?
We've got the fields that we want will be we want ID, mission, launch date, time, and NET.
Oh yeah, okay. So let's define those.
Okay, so that'll be over here. So we're going to have 4 fields.
Yeah. Now now it can be implicitly given, but
it can be. Yeah, right. Yeah, let's just do it that way, shall we?
Yeah. I still think you need to put the brackets. And then you go new field, right?
Yeah.
And type equals something and name equals something.
That was a big int.
Yeah, now we're going to write the .NET type here.
Okay, .NET type, which will be
long.
Just a long, yeah.
And then the name.
I'm just going to copy paste it.
Yep, copy paste programming. But this is the model, this is okay because the model, it's mostly contains non-redundant things, because here we are defining what we want to say. that we have a field with called long ID that is a long, and we have a mission, and that is daytime. Yeah.
There we go.
Let's save and see what happens. This is also quite often a good idea when it comes to this kind of templates.
It hasn't done that bit yet, so we now need to go through all of the. We need to have another loop in here, don't we?
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. Now we need to loop over the fields to generate the fields. It's just like PHP Razor, but for code. So it's the programming model, I would say. Correct me if you disagree, but it's quite, you're used to this programming model.
Yes, absolutely. There's nothing different about this than doing any other type of programming.
And we even get IntelliSense. What about that?
Yeah.
You're really saving keystrokes.
Yes. Well, what I would do is I would probably put these as templates into CodeRush, so I can just do simple things, simple keys.
For these things.
Yeah. Okay, so then we want to have public.
A public field, right?
Field.type.
Public property.
Okay, well that's it. So we're missing a system the system namespace, but other than that, we've got a class that looks pretty much like.
And that's easy to fix. You just add this using in the template. Add this using system, and you're basically good to go.
Right.
So so what's cool here right now is now you define the model, the kind of what you really care about, but we define it in such a way that now we can actually use the same model to generate this read code.
Right.
Because we can loop over this read code when we implement this read function, we can loop over that as well to sort of make sure that this works. So we both generating the class from this, and we will generate the read function. And maybe if we do it another time, we can also show how to read from the database, so we can generate CRUD operations directly from the database.
I think that'd be really good for part 2, to start looking at how we can really ramp up the usefulness and complexity of what we're doing. It's a little bit more advanced, but it'd be really interesting to do that. Yes.
Yeah, and I think we make a simple self-contained example here.
Yes.
What's cool here is also this kind of model also allows us to implement a toString function that is generate a readable toString.
Okay.
Maybe we should warm up with that thing to see if we can do that. So what you do then is in your generated class, I would add let me see, an override toString, public override string toString, right?
Where do you want to do that in
the template?
In the template.
Or in the T4.
Okay.
So if you put it at the top of the class, I can write start.
Okay, I'm ready to start.
If I remember how to do it.
Oh, okay, right. So you mean.
And I'm going to suggest that we use the string builder. To build up a string. So then the question is, how does this look, by the way, in hi Rambling Geek. How does this look in the generated code now? I suspect we have some error.
Yeah, it's certainly because string bull is not in there. That's all.
Yeah, but is that system text? I forget.
I think so. Hi, Ramley Geek. Welcome. Good to see you.
Yes, but we just add system.text.
Oh yeah, we forgot the new. That's all.
Oh yeah. F sharp damaged.
There we go.
Yeah, that looks good. So now we should fill in here. So I can start with the name, and then you can go with the rest.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna start writing append bracket data row dot name, comma, perhaps, no, not comma, semicolon, and then I have an append at the end, and add the end bracket, perhaps you can say. And now in between here we should add the feeds, right?
Okay.
But how does it look when you how does it look when you open up the code in the generated code? Does it look alright, or did I mess up?
Looks okay.
Yep. And you see it injected the correct name of the class here.
Yeah.
So yeah, so then we just add the fields values as well.
So we need to step through all the fields now, don't we? So we're going to put in
a loop.
a little loop in there. So let's get that in place, and then we're going to do a for each. Oops.
You can probably copy paste some for each on other place.
I'll just go in. I want to get back to that. There, that's it.
So you have a for each at just below when you loop over the feed, so you can just copy paste that thing.
Yeah.
Basically, and we just replace the public. Or you do what you want.
Yeah, don't worry.
Yeah, good. And then we start filling in what we do, right?
Yeah.
So then we want a comma before, so we get the comma separated.
Oh, yeah, okay, good idea.
So since we put the name here, we can actually just put the comma there. And then assume we want the name of the field. And finally, then we type equals perhaps or something like that. And then you have the name, the actual field. And then, in my opinion, it's just simpler just to add that as an append.
Okay.
Row. The equal sign I think was good. And then you go sp append. Not the string here. You just grab the field name there. It's easier than you think. It's just taking what you said, you just take the feed name.
Yeah.
As before, and just put it in without the strings. But you need these special characters.
Yeah.
And you need equal sign.
Yeah, I forgot the equal sign. Yeah.
And then you save and see what happens. Look at that.
Wow.
Tears to my eyes. We can actually test this code now. Shall we do that?
Yeah, let's do it.
We just create an instance of this code and just print it. So if you go to the main program.
Yeah, I'm there.
You comment out
the
main
one, yeah.
This thing here on the bottom. Just everything, yeah.
Oops. I'm choosing my my code with shortcuts.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm not sure how to comment out.
You can use the multi-line comment here.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to do it, isn't it? Okie doke.
And then we create a new static main method, right? It's impressive. But I'm good at this too, right? So, and then you create the launch class that we created in the what's called data rows launch.
So over here, we created one of those, yeah.
Yeah, you create the class we created in the other file. So no, not the data row, but I can type what I mean.
You type what you mean, yeah.
Yeah. Launch equals new data row.
Oh, I see what you mean.
And then we just initialize it. And we set what did we have on that thing? I immediately forgot. We have an ID equals 1, 2, 3, perhaps.
Yeah.
And then we have
mission.
Mission equals hello there. Launch date time equals date time UTC, perhaps now.
Yeah.
And we have net equals something. Is that what we
That's fine, yeah.
say? And then I'm proposing that we just write this to like so, and we can see if our what's called toString worked.
So let's run that then, yeah. Oops, I'll put a dot in there. So we haven't.
No, it seems it didn't recompile, right?
No.
Or
I'll do a .NET build. There we are. Right.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So what's cool? What I think is cool about this is that now you kind of have a toString for free.
Yeah.
So whenever you define classes like this, you get a toString that is readable out of the box with no real effort. If you add a new field in this launch.tt, you add a new one, then it comes out.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. And that's useful for debugging. But now so shall we try to implement, or maybe have some questions? I talk a lot.
No,
so.
That's fine. It's just me with my my typing, which kind of
That's fine.
it makes me fall over sometimes. So yeah.
Yeah, but don't just interrupt me if I'm talking too fast.
No, it's all perfectly reasonable. It's just
Yeah.
It's just like writing any of the program, isn't it? There's no difference here.
Yeah. So let's try to implement this read function, and then we can use the code you had written there as the sort of the starting point of our code.
Okay.
So if you go to program.cs.
Yep.
I'm going to follow you as well. You can copy paste this read launches function. And you paste that into the template so that you probably need a new surrounding class. We don't want that inside the data class. We want that sort of in its own class.
Okay.
Maybe called readers, or I don't know, something.
So we put it at the top here, in here.
A
good place for it?
Where? Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, you make a new class. You paste the function in there.
Yeah.
And you save it, and we can see how much errors we have. We have some errors, but so I think mainly it's that we are lacking a few using. We lack the system collections generic, right?
Yeah, that's all we need, I think.
System data. Collections,
that's it.
.generic, I believe, is the one. I think so. Also,
let's pop over there, have a look. Make sure we get the right one. Yeah. Grab that.
we save, and then we see what it says.
Seems happy enough. Oops, we're missing a. We got an extra.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm just missing a couple of brackets. That's all.
Look at that.
There it is.
So now it's just up to us to sort of fix it. So let's look at what this function does. We can. I suggest we look at it in when we have in the code. So what this function does first is that it collects a few default values, because we're going to use these default values when it's null.
Yes.
Then we're going to fall back on these things, and then it's just normal create command and command text. That's just these
it's
things.
Boilerplate code, that, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, just going to say. And then what happens is that it creates a row with the same number of columns as the query returns. So it asks for a field count, and then it creates a row which is an object with all field counts.
Yep.
Then it's also asks the reader which ordinal, which position does the ID column have, which position does the mission column have, and so on and so forth. Because they can be different depending on the query, but it requires that ID, that mission, launch date, time, and net. It has to exist.
Yeah.
So depending on the query you send in, it requires that. But it finds these ordinals for you at this point in time. And then it reads the first row, and then it gets the values. It gets the objects as an object. So you see reader.get values,
Yep.
and then it just checks that the actual field count is the same as the field count, and that's just something. And then it does some ugly looking code, but basically what it's doing is with val ID is that it checks that if the ordinal value of ordinal ID is the db null value, then we return the default value for ID. Otherwise, we cast the row ord ID as a long.
Yeah.
And then we do the same thing. This is just boring boilerplate code. But it does the same thing for mission, but then it casts it as a string and so on and so forth. And then in the end, it sort of yield returns the new launch. So what we want to do is sort of change all of these things here. So instead of sort of having this hard coded, it should actually use the model that you defined earlier.
Yep.
And that is just a couple of for loops in these things here. So let's start with go back to the template, and we make this we fix this thing here.
So I like this because you can do this in steps, can't you? We've got what we want an example piece of code to look like. Now we can work on it in steps.
Yeah, it's always good to work in steps. Sort of you transform the code in step by step, and sort of continue to look at it. So I think we just start with the first piece here, right?
Yep, this one here. Yep.
So if you copy paste keep the code.
Yep.
Yeah, and if you copy paste the row fields for loop you had below.
I'll just grab the whole lot actually.
Yeah, yes, everything, right? And then you take this first row, the var default ID, and we're going to make this generic now. And you put that inside this for loop. So one thing that is easy here is replacing ID with name.
Yep.
That we can just do. And then, now it's not going to preserve the exact semantics of the code, but it's going to be okay to start with. Then you can replace var with the type of field name. And then instead of 0, you say default. And save and see what happens.
So we got a compilation error there, so yeah. I think it's going to be default. Hasn't it got to be something like that? No.
We got the wrong kind of. We got the template compilation error here. So it's something wrong with the template, not wrong with the C# code.
Okay.
So what could that be? Did you get any? Did you see some? What is the error message say there? The one with the red cross.
Name data row doesn't exist.
Name. Oh yeah. Okay. Well, that's not so. Okay, that's easy. Okay. Well, that's a mistake. So okay, of course. So copy paste for each data row in model. Take that one and put it above the method static enumerable read launches. And then you put the end loop. If you go beyond, not there. You need one step up, right?
Possibly.
Because otherwise we're going to repeat the class.
That's right. It's in the class. Yeah.
And I was going to remove this space here.
Yeah.
So what happens if you save this thing here?
Yep, there it is. It's got that code there nicely.
Yeah, so it's complaining about that. But we should also fix, these are hard-coded now, the launch and the launches, that's hard-coded. We should fix that as well.
Yeah.
But, it looks not too bad. It looks like code that could work.
Yeah, well, let's sort it out.
Yeah. So let's fix the hard-coded enumerable launch.
I'll get rid of those first, and then we'll get this is going to be
data row name. And I will just call it read launch.
Yeah, absolutely.
And avoid all this discussion about
pluralization. Yeah. There we go.
And save.
Yeah, relaunch. Okay, so we can carry on with that then.
So now, but now we achieved something here, right? We have generalized. Part of the code was previously hard-coded. We have now generalized it, so it could work for anything.
Yeah.
So let's just do the same process we did, but we do it for all other cases where we're having this problem.
Okay.
So now the next step is the ordinal number, right?
These ones here, yeah.
And we don't remove it, but copy paste the for loop above. And paste in. Yeah, exactly right. And then you take one of the rows there. Don't indent that.
No,
It's not worth the effort.
Okay.
I learned that the hard way. And then you take one of the rows below and copy paste that. Just copy paste the whole row, and then we make it generalized. Then we generalize it.
Okay. So
this I would indent though, because that I care about.
Yeah.
And then we just put in the name of the field, right? And instead of the ID, we put in the name of the field again. This is almost too easy.
It just seemed very easy.
Capital N. And then we remove the non-general code. And let's save and see what happens. I always like to sort of continuously save and see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you can get very cryptic error otherwise. But if you always save and sort of keep it runnable, then it's not so because sometimes when the template is incompatible or it doesn't work, you can get errors like I don't know what the problem is.
Right.
You're missing some brackets. But this looks fine, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's just take the last step now.
Which is this bit here, yeah.
Or the second last step, I realized. And copy paste the for loop again, right? Just same thing. So yeah, so we just replace the name here. You can type field.name, so you can copy paste the whole expression here, right?
Yeah.
The whole. Yes, and then you have ID here. Port ID, yeah, it's good. Default ID, we have prepared the default ID. Is there something else? Or yeah, what is? And the type is wrong, so that should be the type of the field. Cool, and then we remove the code that is no longer needed. Save. We see what happens.
Coming along, that's nice, isn't it? Yeah. Just the yield next.
And then now we do the final step here. Copy pasting the for loop. Oh yeah, this should be fixed.
This is going to be the
should be fixed too, yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, there's some small mistakes just. Let's see here. Right? I'm going to fix that.
Oh, sorry, I put the yeah, and the closing thingy there, yeah, and the equal sign, yeah.
Let's save and see what happens.
There it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
This method is to public row, I think. Read launch.
Yeah, maybe make it public.
Private, so we should fix that.
Yep, there we go.
So I mean, now in theory, what we have done should work. I mean, there might be bugs here, obviously.
Let's try
shall
it.
we try to test it? We create a new main method. And you copy paste the code you copied out in the main method. And we, instead of using the old hard-coded read launches, we use the new generated read launch. Like I told you earlier, I'm on call this day, so I'm just going to check if things are...
Yeah, you go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like... Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I have a tiny bit of issue, but I don't have to look at it right now. Being on call, such fun. So, read launch is not found because you need to use the namespace.
Yeah.
You did.
Okay.
So in theory,
it should work.
And now, yeah, we can try this, right? And see what happens. So,
let's make sure we save. I'll .NET build as well, I think.
Yeah.
There we go.
Shall we try our toString as well? You just.
We've got a failure here somewhere. What's going on here? Interesting. We got some data rows coming out.
Yeah. Let's change the code so it instead you just do toString on the launch. Yeah, I don't know what that is. That's a different project, I think.
Weird. Project file might be invalid. Missing tasks required for restore.
But I think this is the SQL Rock Launches project. It's not our CS project.
No, it's yes. It's just my It shouldn't be causing a problem though. I wouldn't have thought. It's just the database project.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's okay.
I'm gonna. Shall we just fix the?
There
so
it is.
we tried to use the toString.
Yep. So there we are. See if you carry on. It's worked this time. It's printed out all the data.
Yeah. So let's change the console write line to using toString. Or you can just do like that launch, right? Because we implemented the toString earlier.
Yep.
So it might not look as nice, but it should work, right?
Absolutely. There we go.
Yep.
Wonderful.
So what we've done so far, right, is I think it's pretty cool what we've done.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have implemented. Okay, so we've basically done what you already done. But what's cool here is like now we can go back to this launch TT model and we can just imagine we want to add another field that you had in this.
Yep, there's another field.
Yeah, do you know of another field?
Yep, absolutely. We can add another field in here. We can say.
How do you? Yeah, Vitlo, let's come back to that question.
I think it's called stage recovery.
Bool, and what is the name?
Stage recovery, the name is. There we go.
Yeah. Let's see if that works.
Looks okay there. And there we go.
Need to see it. My terminal didn't work, so I'm waiting for what says on your screen. Stage recovery true.
Yeah, and false there for the Starliner.
So,
yeah.
You updated your model. You said, in addition to having all else, I want to add the stage recovery. And what the T4 template then did was updating your data row class, which is called launch. It updated the toString function, so it included that in the toString. It also added the necessary code to the read launch function.
Yeah.
So you added a single field, and you refactored all the generated code.
Yeah.
In addition, I'm just gonna, it's not. I don't know if your data model, but if you want to have a new, I'm going to copy paste all of this, and I'm going to make a launch 2, which is stupid. And then you just save it, and we can see if that works. We might have some bugs here. Maybe I did something wrong.
A closing curly brace.
Curly brace too little, right? Yeah. So I'm adding the curly brace. This should be it. So if we save and try again.
There it is.
So that's kind of stupid, right? But now we have a read launch 2 method, which is exactly the same as the old one. But you can easily imagine, you have different field. This is not even called launch. It's a different tables. It's a different select.
Absolutely.
And you get all of these things. And when you define the model in the launch TD, you only say what it should contain. You don't say the code. The code is kind of coming from the model.
Yeah.
If it makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's model driven. You just say what you want, and it generates the code to get it. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. And the difference between this thing and other kind of models. Sometimes you get this kit, but then as a programmer you only control the model. But what I like about this is that I control both the model and the template.
Yeah.
So as a programmer, sometimes I want to add another class. And sometimes I want to refactor the generated code. And then if I find out that there's a smarter way to actually read data rows that is faster, well, then I change the template.
Yeah, and then every single time you use that, you benefiting from your refactoring. Yeah.
Yeah. So does all this make sense to you?
It does. Yes. It gets your mind working what you could use it for.
So Vitlol had a question in chat, and how do you generate multiple files? And I'm going to assume that what you mean is how do you generate from a single template multiple files? Now, in T4, you don't really do that. There are plugins that allows you to do that, but in my head, they are not worth the effort. But there are tools. If you really care about these things, there are tools that does this. But from my perspective, I don't mind that a single template generates a single output, and then I put all the classes in that file.
Yeah.
templates can get too big otherwise, but you can certainly, what you can do, Vitlol, is that you can certainly say, let's say you have multiple templates, so you want to generate these kind of data row classes and generate other classes, that you can split up. But this file here, I wouldn't split up in many other subfiles, personally. Because I'm not maintaining really the generated code. Often when we write separated files, we're doing that to sort of help maintenance by breaking it down.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's possible. What you can do, and let's see if you can do it here. I kind of forgot the syntax. Is you can include template files. So you can create this hierarchy of templates that can include other files. Because sometimes when you reach this point, maybe we can try this. Is that sometimes you're saying, "Oh boy, I just created something that is reusable."
Right. Yeah.
And what you want to do then is saying, "Okay, I actually want to sort of reuse my template now. And I want to create a reusable template." And then I have to look at some code because I don't remember the syntax because it's doing. But it's possible to extract the template part in one file and the model part in another file, and then defining the model and including the template. And then you can actually reuse these templates in many different places. And in some sense, what you're asking for with the Vitlol is you can actually generate multiple files because each model will then generate a specific file. So we could, should we try that?
Yeah, let's give it a go. Yeah, it's interesting that we've got that question in chat, so let's see if we can answer it.
So I would then suggest that you create a file that you call datarow.ttinclude, and this is ttinclude has no meaning. It's just a convention that I use. And I'm going to Google some syntax while I'm doing that.
Okay, we got that file.
And give me a second.
That's no problem.
What you can start by doing is just copying the whole file, the other file into that file. I'm almost there now. Yes. So you copy basically the whole file.
Yeah.
Yes. So it looks like we don't get IntelliSense in here. So maybe that's a little bit sad. Okay, but let's ignore that for now. That's a big loss. But maybe we can ask for a PR that they also color the ttinclude, and maybe they have another name. But the purpose of ttinclude is that it doesn't have any real meaning, and it sort of tells us that the purpose of this file is to sort of be included.
Yeah, that's fine.
So I'm going to remove everything we don't need here in this file. So we don't need the outputs extension because we get that from the file outside, and we shouldn't have the model because the model we get from the file on the outside. But everything else we keep. Like so.
Okay.
And let's just put this file in sort of in an untitled file here. So if I mess this up, everything is not gone. All our hard work is gone, right? And I found an old like I said, I'm a bit of a stickler for these things. So
yeah, I can tell. I'm the same. I do like to have spaces and blank lines in the right places, and I do go through and change other people's code so it looks like that. Probably to their annoyance.
It's a problem. I'm slowly coming to terms with it. Let's see what happens when you save this thing here.
Right, so what we just moved the data models into there. Okay, fine. So we got a warning of multiple output directives were found.
Did we?
I thought we got rid of them.
Did I forget to? Maybe I didn't save.
Okay, so it's save all. So we're getting cannot use local variable model before it's declared.
Okay, so maybe it's just as simple as take this thing here and put it on the bottom. I don't really remember, if I'm being honest. Let's try again.
Okay, that processed okay. There you go.
So the only thing we did now was I created. So what we did now, we created a reusable template here. In that now I can create a launch2.tt that includes the same template that I just did. Yeah, it is really basically PHP. It is.
Yeah.
It is PHP. It's nothing magic about this thing. And what I like about this thing is, if with reflection and all these kind of things, people can say, "Oh, it's too complicated." But I think which developer wants to admit to themselves PHP is too hard to get?
Nobody.
No. No developer with some kind of self-esteem can say, "No, I don't understand it." So with partial templates in C++, I can kind of get it that you don't get it. But here, no excuse. But so here we created a reusable template called data row tt include that we can use in multiple parts of our project, and we can sort of check in. So I think that's pretty cool. And if we would create another file called launch2tt, that would generate a launch2 CS and so on and so forth. So then we can get multiple files generated from the same template.
Do you want me to do that?
Yeah, you can do that.
And just copy that one in, yeah.
Yep. And we're probably going to get errors now because we have duplicated names, but that's not the point of the exercise.
Is that what you wanted to do? That?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, remove. Yeah, do it like that. Yes. Remove that. And call it launch 3, perhaps.
Okay. Oh, cool. Yeah, it's okay. So we should have launch2.css, which we do.
Oh yeah, now you see another thing here, right? Data rows only contains definition of reader. Okay, that's because we didn't make reader a partial class, but that's fixable in the data row did include. And partial is standing, that is right before class. So partial here is wrongly placed. Something I learned, that it's very picky. And then we need to save the TT file. So we generate it. So we make a single character change in each of the TT files. There is a file in Visual Studio with something called regenerate all templates, I believe. I'm not sure if that exists in But this is the low tech version to do it.
Yeah. The launch 2's there.
So
multiple files.
Yeah, so we have a reusable template, and we're having 2 different models that are generating this kind of code.
So Deathpack's saying that T4 templates like voodoo. What do you mean, Deathpacks?
PHP is voodoo as well.
Well,
if it is, then
evil.
Yeah. So, but let's reflect a little bit what we've done so far.
PHP's voodoo, yeah.
So we started from nothing, basically, and we talked for 2 hours. And what we kind of have created is a T4 version of Dapper.
Yeah, it's the start. It's the start of it, isn't it? It's obviously we're having to define things, as you say, by hand, but it's the start of a kind of a Dapper equivalent. Plenty of work to do, but yeah.
What we're lacking kind of from Dapper is that the Dapper allows us to sort of pass in these unnamed classes that contains arguments. That thing we're lacking, but we could add that stuff. But not going to do it tonight because it's getting too late. But we could add that sort of as well. But I think we're pretty cool that we actually achieved something.
Yeah, absolutely.
That we solved. That we don't have to write these kind of sort of error-prone reading from database using an execute reader, and mixing up types and mixing up these kind of things. And we don't have to rely on reflection, which is an advanced technique, especially if you need performance. Instead, we are relying on good old C# code. And this C# code you have in front of you, read launch, you can put the breakpoint here. If you don't understand what it's doing, you can put the breakpoint here, and you can debug it like normal with the normal tools. And another benefit here is, say this is Friday, 5 o'clock, and you want to go home. And you find a bug here in this read launch code. And you cannot come up with the right solution. But what's nice is you can actually hack in a quick fix, because this is just a generated text file. And then you write me, I'm so sorry, but I want to go home. It's Friday afternoon. I'm going to fix this on Monday. And then you can check it in and deploy your fix.
And it's deployed everywhere, yeah.
When you come back on Monday, you fix the template because you've been thinking of this over the weekend, and then you have the proper fix. But at least you could do that. If you use something called reflection, with reflection technique, or if you use something like the partial templates, you have to fix it the right way.
Yeah, actually, you told me a story last week about where you use T4 templates to copy or to sync up different schemas that were very similar, slightly different. Why don't you chat about that?
Yeah, so about anecdotes where I use templates for a lot of this T4 for a lot of things. I use it for this kind of code. I use it to sort of generate when I have C++ in one end and C# in one end, and I need to sort of generate a binary format to copy that needs to be in sync. Because what's cool about T4 is that it can generate C++ code as well, or it can generate XML, or it can generate TSQL, which is like SQL Server. And the story you're touching on is the most time I ever saved using T4. So I was working in a company, and we had databases on different locations. And they had schemas that were slightly different, and we needed to sync them. And because the schemas were slightly different, we couldn't do like log syncing and these kind of things. It didn't work. And we needed performance, so we needed to use partial syncing when possible, but we also need to support a full sync. So the first time we sync everything, and that had to be performant as well. So there are a lot of different things that we had to do, and we had to implement this in SQL TSQL because the architect, he said, no, this is how we do it. We do it in SQL.
Right.
And when you write this kind of SQL for a reasonably large database, you quickly get so sick of this thing. It's so redundant, this code. It's not hard, but it's so much. So I ended up writing a T4 template that allowed me to put in a source database and a target database. It took a difference of these two databases, the schemas, and told me, these are the conflicts. These are the things I don't understand. You need to provide ways to convert from this field into this field. Because it usually, if the field has the same name and the same type, it just copied it.
Right.
Because I could use that as a general convention. So then I added overrides. In my model, I added overrides. This field should be converted like this. And then I generated this SQL script and I copied that thing in. And my boss, he kind of realized, I think, how cool this was when he asked me, we need a new sync. And usually that was like, oh yeah, a week of work gone. For this database, I'm sorry to tell you, but we need it, and we need it quite quickly. But I have prepared this template. So a half an hour later, I told him, well, it's kind of done now. It seems to be working. And he was like, what? What are you talking about? Because what they had done up to that part is sort of copy-pasting an existing one and then changing randomly until it seemed to be working. And that usually took quite some time. And now I had this thing that just worked. And I didn't even really work hard. And in the end, it generated up to, I think, 300,000 lines of code.
Wow.
300,000.
Wow.
That's quite much.
Yeah.
Imagine writing that code.
No, I wouldn't want to write that much code.
That's mind-numbing. That's mind-boggling code.
And do you remember how big the TT file was?
It was 7,000 lines of code. It was a complex one, I must admit. It was difficult, right? It wasn't the most simplest thing I ever wrote. But if you compare the time it took to implement that thing, and I felt creative and smart while doing it, compared to writing by hand. And here's the catch also for why I also think that T4 is good. When I wrote my advanced C++ templates, and my friends that I was working with said, we cannot work with this thing. They had to throw away all my code and write code from scratch.
Yeah.
Now let's imagine with this SQL sync thing, a new developer comes in and he doesn't understand how these things work, but he understands SQL. I think this is a wrong choice, but that developer can say, screw that generation. I'm just going to maintain these scripts by hand.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have to rewrite. The effort that I made to generate that is not lost if they cannot work with it. If it's too complex, they can at least start from that and work with it manually.
Yeah, so, very true. Yeah.
So this means that the risk of adding this tool into a tool chain, I think, is much, much lower, because when saying we need to add this complex tool chain, but what if our new developers don't get it or whatever, right? Or if this tool is discontinued, what do we do then?
We've still got the code.
You still got code. You can still maintain it by hand. I mean, it's not, if you ask me, I think that's the wrong choice, but you can do it. You don't have to throw it away and start from scratch.
Yeah.
And usually what I found is you can usually find it, then if you find different uses for these models. Oh, I have this model here and I write a new template and, and you generate new stuff from it. You generate documentation. When I worked at Ericsson, I have many stories. But when I worked at Ericsson, and this is might make Vitlord happy, I was working on, Ericsson base stations use Java. And this was just 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And that base station used Java 1.4, which doesn't have generics. So this is basically year 2000 version of Java.
Right.
But that's what we had. And I wanted generics. I really wanted it. So what I did was that I wrote a template that allowed me to define my generic kind of versions. Like I was saying, I want to have a list of strings. I want to have a list of whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then it generated all this wrapper code to make these collections type safe around these things. which I could write by hand, but now I generated all of it. And then I realized, oh boy, we have quite a lot of code here. I need to unit test that because we needed to reach 90% code coverage. So then I generated the test code
as well. Excellent.
So I generated everything from that model. And it worked, in my opinion, very well. And that wasn't .NET at all.
No,
that was
Java, yeah. So it's so the T4 technology isn't anything proprietary to Microsoft. It's a generic.
T4 itself is Microsoft
is it?
specific.
Okay.
Yes, and it's I'm not sure they changed it, but it used to be this license that said you cannot ship it unless with Visual Studio.
Okay.
But there are a number of tools out there that does what T4 does. There's some. I wrote some up, so let's see if I can mention them. There are different versions of this thing, and I think there are pros and cons.
Right.
So we have T4. We also have something called Marco Template, which is something based on Python, which I think is probably not the right idea, but it's quite popular. So people use a Marco template. I believe they use Marco template to generate slash dot pages. I think it's called something Mustache.
Oh yes, Mustache. I've come across that. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, some people actually use PHP for code generation. And a friend of mine, he swears PowerShell is the shit. This is the correct tool.
Yeah.
He swears by it, and he's a very smart guy. So I'm like, well, I cannot really dismiss it. I'm not, I don't really see it, but he's a clever guy, so I cannot, say no, you're wrong. And then, of course, I wrote my own.
You wrote your own. Oh, yeah, I might have guessed.
Because when I was working at Ericsson, I didn't find in my opinion, a good tool which I approved of, and I wanted desperately something that worked on Linux and in Linux environment. So I wrote this Carnelian tool, which it's basically like T4, but it's in Ruby instead.
Right.
And I honestly kind of think it's quite good. But, you're probably better off choosing a more well-known, but it never failed me. I think it works fine.
I'm sure it does.
Sorry?
I'm sure it does. So, your programming skill, it's going to be a solid tool. But the great thing about this, what we've gone through today, though, is you've told us some kind of stories about how you've used this, but we can get arbitrarily complex with the processing inside here, can't we? There's no limits on what you can do.
Yeah.
It's just your imagination and what you're required to do.
It's a hard thing. If you make the template super complex, then that's going to hurt maintenance as well. So it's a difficult thing to sort of find the correct balance, I think.
So let's just have a look at the T4 template, just out of interest. That's in the synthesizer project. Let's see if I can find that.
After a while, you want to do more. You want to be smarter and smarter and smarter. And sometimes I feel maybe all this smartness is hurting more than it helps.
Yeah.
But T4, like many other tools, is kind of seductive because when you work with it, you feel clever. And then you start doing clever things. And that sometimes is not the best choice. But what's good about T4 is you can always say, we're going to maintain the generated code. That's what we're going to do.
I'm just going to go and locate the synthesizer project, which is over here.
But I think this pattern, which I try to introduce here, that separating the model from the template is a very good pattern to apply in these templates. Because then you have the model, and that is kind of what you care about, what you want to generate. And then you have the template that transforms the model, and that can maybe grow quite complex, and then you need to refactor it. But you have that separation at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's a good pattern. If anything, I would recommend it. So here it's the same thing really. Here up is the model, and here I use some tricks to sort of reduce the amount of text here. But basically, what P is creating is that it creates this field type. But I have a method called P, which is then the type is visibility, and the name is media visibility, and C is something else I forgot. That's collection perhaps? Yeah, it's a collection.
Yeah.
So it has a different meaning. But what you're looking on here on the screen is the model of the templates you want to generate. And as we were working with this SMB, in the beginning I started with something very simple, but then you said I want to sort of have a label property, or at least I identified that as you wanted to have a label property.
That's right, yeah.
So if you have the LP here, it has the type and the name, and it also has a formula to compute the label.
And this made it so quick to generate the bindings. It was just amazing.
Yeah.
And you see there's quite a few of them now. So there was only a few to start with, but now we've got quite a lot.
Yeah.
And then we got commands as well.
And I think this is readable. You see, we have something called a float, a chorus sweep, and this has this label, yeah. And then we have some commands on the bottom, on/off command, etc., etc., etc. And now here comes the template, which it loops over the model to generate the code. So if you go down here, I use partial class here, as you see, and then I say for each property in properties. And then I have, if the property is a collection, I have a special handling of that thing. And then I use this observable collection. So I test that. And then I check if label value is greater than 0. That means it has a label. Then I do something special, depending on that. So the template is, it does stuff, and it is complex. But what I also like about T4 is that if you want to make a change, you go into the code and you look for, I think it's here, and then you start typing some text and you save it, and you see what it generates.
Yeah, so it's
and then you start thinking, it's not right. But then you change it a little bit. You can work this very incremental way.
Yeah, a very natural way of working, isn't it? Rather than just kind of guessing, you can just it takes very small changes.
And when we created our template, we take the hard-code function and change one part of it. Okay, now it's done. Take the next one. We worked very incrementally.
Yeah.
And I think that's very productive. And the T4 is very good that you save the file and it generates it. It allows us to sort of work in small steps towards the goal. And it also allows you to sort of, what I do if I have a really complex template is I just insert some comments, like a comment X, comment Y, and then I see where it generates it.
Yeah, yeah.
Then I start understanding how it works, and then I start, okay, let's see if I do this thing. And the good thing here is, like, in the end, it generates code, and then you just code review the code that it generates. And see if is it good? Well, I guess then it works. It might be some corner cases you haven't thought about, but at least for the instance you generated, it worked.
Yeah.
So I like this model to work with. I think it's quite good.
Well, this certainly it was very impressive how this worked. So this is what kind of piqued interest in T4 really. And
also, by the way, here you see these partial methods. You can go up there and show them. On the command, scroll down. Or you search for partial void, search for that. Here we are. Sorry, I'm looking at your screen.
Okay.
Search for partial void. Yeah, I'm looking on the stream, so I'm a little bit delayed. I'm like, this is good. And then I realize, no, a few seconds off. So if you search for partial void, I'm not sure if I follow you correctly here. Can I follow you? No, I think you're in a different project.
Yeah, I'm in a different session at the moment.
I have to look at your projects. Okay, but here you're now partial void changed. Yeah. So not only partial classes, you can also have partial methods. And this allows you as a developer to inject into the generated code extension points. Somehow, a little bit like virtual methods.
Yeah.
You can imagine them. If that helps, think of them like virtual methods. And this method gets called by the generated code to allow the developer to say, okay, if this property is changed, I want to implement some business logic. But for other properties, might be you don't need any business logic, so then you don't implement it. But in this case, I'm saying, okay, I have this partial method, and if you need the business logic, you implement this partial method inside your class. And that allows to injecting behavior into the generated code. And this, I built some pretty cool stuff using this in my C# days, where I generated a full sort of document, kind of full. I once worked with a developer who said that the business logic is the exception to the model.
Yeah.
So you generate a model, but it basically has no behavior. But then you add behavior using these extensions, and that is called the business logic. And I implemented basically a simple ERP system using these things, and I thought it was quite cool actually, and also quite good. But the partial method, if you don't implement it, it doesn't do anything. It just is a NOP operation. And you used it, I think, sometimes to implement business logic in the BPF application.
So we've got I think where we did this, it would be in the
I think in the view model.
Main window view model. There we go. There.
And if you search for partial inside there, you should see some partial methods.
There we go. So the constructed. So it's on the constructed part. We did some work there, and here's changed.
Yes.
Milliseconds
So
changed lately.
That's extension method. Constructed is called when the object is constructed, because it wants to do other things. It wants to generate a constructor. Here is like you have some. If these properties are changed, then you want to do this. You want to update these to change the sound. So when you change the delay or when you change the dry or wet, you want to update the corresponding properties so the sound changes that way.
This is a good example here where the volume is a double. The volume value is a double. We're actually changing it into decibels here.
Yeah. So here you're implementing the business logic. So the model gives you these things, this framework that interacts with the view and sets up things so it behaves in a certain way. But then you need to sort of, change the behavior, and then it does do that using your partial. And inside these partial methods, you're writing things that are unique.
Yeah, these are the exceptions. So, example here, we've got the when doing with the tremolo feature, we're multiplying the multiplier by the frequency and then updating the LFOs here.
You're pulling in several different properties here to do that. Yeah. So it's just an example of how one can use that to sort of, in my opinion, simplify working with this kind of code. Because many people, they really despise working with VPF because of this boilerplate it kind of implies. And I agree, but I use T4 to fix it, and then it doesn't feel so bad.
Yeah.
Anything else? Any other ideas from your side?
No, I think that's been a really good introduction to T4, and I think we can probably take it a bit further in part 2. But really go into making something which is a bit more like actually reading the schema of the database, because that'd be really interesting to do. But that's been a really kind of inspirational for me, because I can think of loads of things that I want to go in T4 now. I don't have time to go and do it, but it's something I can. We do an awful lot of boilerplate code in our day-to-day work,
yes.
And if we can actually remove that drudgery and also make it less error prone and less boring to do. Really, it is just it's rote work. It's not fun. So this makes it fun again. So yes, Dragon, I agree. It's a really good intro, wasn't it?
And if I want to give you an advice to start, or I want to give you an advice to start, and I think start with something simple.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because if you start with something complex, the first templates I wrote were bad because this is a new skill for me. I had to learn. So I was a good developer, but I was not a good meta developer or meta programmer.
Right, yeah. There's a difference, isn't there?
So start with something simple, and you get it to work, and you say, this doesn't look good, but you're learning something in this process. The next time you go back and maybe read something, it's going to look better. So you're going to learn something. But that's cool. It's cool to learn stuff.
Absolutely. That's what we do every day.
Yeah. So start with something simple. Take a simple problem. Don't take this database sync problem that I did, because that's a horrible first thing to do.
Yes, I don't want to do that, no. Well, thank you very much, Morten. That's been really, really, really good, and we're finished well in time. And you've got a call to go to anyway, I understand. So, thanks so much for coming on. And can we persuade you to come on next week as well and do a part 2?
Yeah, sure. And once again, if I talk too much, I have a tendency to do that.
It's always fascinating stuff, and your anecdotes are very insightful and interesting. Yeah, it's nice getting started, wasn't it, Weetle? So let's. First thing I want to do is to just to mention that this code will appear on GitHub shortly after this end of the stream. So my GitHub is here. So it's called T4 Templates, and it'll be all available, in the next kind of 5-10 minutes. If you want to go and have a look at it, download it, play with it, whatever you want to do with it. The database we were using is also a database project in with that code, so you can recreate what we did, or you can just use the ideas. For those people who followed, thank you very much. If you're not a follower and you're in chat, it'd be very nice if you could hit that follow button. You get some more information about when I stream, advanced notification of those. Also, I do have a Twitter account, which I will post into chat. It'd be very nice to have a follow on Twitter as well. That way you do get to know when I go live, and also I do occasionally do pop-up streams on various subjects. So you'll find out from that. There's a Discord which you can go and visit. Here is your personal invitation to my Discord. We talk about many different things over there. Coding. You can talk to me about what it's like being a IT manager, managing a team. If you've got interest in doing some kind of management or team leading, I can help you with advice on that. We also talk about space. I'm a big SpaceX rocket nut, so that's why this database has all got rockets in it. And finally, I do also have a YouTube channel.
And this thing is going to appear on YouTube, right, as well?
It will be on YouTube within 24 hours. I've got to wait.
So Coding Beard, if you want to see the start, it might be there.
Yeah, it'll be there within 24 hours. I've got to leave it on Twitch for 24 hours, because that's the agreement to have with Twitch as an affiliate. So there's a 24-hour gap. Cody Beard, you're busy watching documentary on the Saturn V. Now, interesting. There says Saturn V. So I have a kind of a plan. I'm angling to get the Lego Saturn V for my birthday in a couple of months' time, and I'm thinking of having some streams where I build it on stream. So I'm not sure if that's ever going to come about, but that's one idea I've got. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting that Saturn V if I can find a set of it somewhere, and also get my family to fork out the money. Yeah, it's quite big. It's probably about 4 foot long, I think. Yeah.
And you're going to attach a rocket to it and run it up in the sky?
No, it was just fall to pieces, but it'd be nice to be able to do that. Yeah, Rambling Geek, as an affiliate, we have to keep our our streams is exclusive to Twitch for 24 hours. But I mean, I'm not sure of how hard they kind of come down if you don't do that. But that's in the small print of our affiliate agreements. So yeah, worth knowing that. I didn't know until Brendan told me about that. Okay, so let's find someone to raid. Thank you everyone for joining the stream today. I've really enjoyed that, as I always do when Mårten comes on, because he's got so much interesting stuff to talk about. But we'll find Gareth Hubble's streaming.
Yeah.
So let's go and raid Gareth. So Gareth's doing, I think he's doing F#. I think he was last time I heard. So let's all join him. So do stay in the channel to be. He's doing Android, is he, Dragon Eye? Okay, fair enough. So let's go and join Gareth on his stream. So when we go over there, do spam chat with any emotes you've got. If you happen to be a subscriber, then you should have some alpha emotes to spam. So let's go over there now. So thank you everyone for joining the stream today, and we'll see you on Wednesday for some more text adventure coding, and then next Monday back with Mårten to do some more T4. Take care everyone. Bye bye.